My name is Hadassa. I'm the founder of an organization called Waiting Wombs Trust. Our organization creates awareness, brings together and supports families in their journey to parenthood. By this, I'm talking about matters infertility and reproductive health. Welcome to our show. Together with me today is a team of awesome people, and I just want to invite them to introduce themselves before we kick on this discussion.
Hi, my name is Karen Sowon, and I'm also an endo warrior, but in addition to that, I am the founder of a small company that's called Karen's Homemade that deals with personal care products, natural personal care products, and gluten-free products.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Dr. Kireki Omanwa. I'm a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist, and apart from that, I'm a fertility specialist dealing with fertility issues. And thank you very much for inviting me to this.
You're welcome.
Studio.
Thank you very much. It's nice to have you. We are all in yellow. My sister Karen is all yellowed up, myself, and even Dr. Kireki actually has a yellow tie. Yellow for us is endometriosis. We're trying to create awareness on a condition called endometriosis or endometriosis, depending on where you come from.
Mm-hmm.
And we just want to talk about this, maybe to create awareness and also just to educate and reach out to someone who may be in the same shoes like us. I should say that I've been married for 12 years. We are still waiting for the blessing of a child. And I've also gone for 3 surgeries, and I suffer from endometriosis and adenomyosis. Dr. What are these big terms I'm talking about? What is this endometriosis?
Those are big: endometriosis, adenomyosis, and so on. Mm-hmm. Maybe let's start right from the beginning, from the basics. Mm-hmm. Basically, what is endometriosis?
Yes.
Ladies have a period every month, or they should have a period every month. Mm-hmm. Ideally, what comes out during the period is what we call the lining of the womb. Mm-hmm. That is what is called endometrium. So when this endometrium finds itself in other places, and those places can be, for example, it can be on the ovary or ovaries for that matter, it can be on the tube, it can be on the intestines, the large intestines. Sometimes it can be after cesarean section, on the cesarean section scar. It can be after delivery of a baby. Once a lady has delivered naturally, we sometimes make a small cut to enable the baby to come out, and what we call an episiotomy scar. So that bit of endometrium can also be in all these other places. It can also be in distant places. For example, it can be in the lungs, very rare. It has been found in the brain, very rare as well. Sometimes actually even in the nails. So if there is any tissue of that endometrium which is in a place where it is not supposed to be, then it is called endometriosis. Now, if that tissue is found in the muscle of the womb, then it is called adenomyosis.
That's interesting. I actually didn't know that endometriosis can be found in the nails and brain. I have to admit that is a first one for me.
It's very, very rare, but one of my senior colleagues actually at the university where I teach actually has a case or two where he has found endometriosis in the nails and endometriosis in the brain. Thankfully, they are very, very few, because you can imagine endometriosis in the brain is catastrophic.
Just before we talk about the causes, the symptoms and all this, I'm interested in knowing, Karen, how did you find out that you had endometriosis? What were your symptoms like?
It's interesting that was quite a journey. I mean, initially I just had pain. I had really severe pain during my period, and I couldn't understand it. And people would tell me, do this, try the other, exercise more, eat better, and I'll do all those things, but I'm like, I still have pain.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm passing out. I just see stars, such weird things. And when I'd go to the doctors, they would do a pelvic scan. Every time I went to the doctor or a gynae, they'd say, let's do a pelvic scan. And then the pelvic scan would be a clean bill of health.
Yeah.
You there's no problem with you, go on. But I think as I was reading about dysmenorrhea, because I like to find out. I am a very research-based person. I like to know what's happening.
Yeah.
So as I was reading around the internet, I came across the term endometriosis, which I had never heard about. And then on reading the symptoms, I thought, hey, but it looks like I'm suffering from some of them and most of the symptoms. So one time when I was in Cape Town studying, I went to the doctor, a gynae, and I told them, I think I have endometriosis.
So you go with a diagnosis.
Yes,
to the
clearly.
doctor.
And I mean, she listened to my symptoms, of course, kind enough to listen to my symptoms.
Yeah.
And then she said, I think so too. But we can only be sure once we check.
So you're actually your own doctor
Yes.
at that point.
Let's say I diagnosed myself.
Yourself. Weird, but also very interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you got help. At least now you know. It's one thing to go through pain and not understand what's happening.
It's true.
And I actually think you're safer knowing why you are in certain pains. And I want to wrap this in because most of us suffer from pain, but I think it's an African culture. I'll use my mom as an example in this one. When you have a problem, they say, just take this tablet. It's almost like a self-medication thing that we do not encourage. Period pains are not normal. If you're going through this, please seek help. What are some of these symptoms? How can I tell that I have endometriosis?
I think one of the typical symptoms that patients come with is pain. And the first question, obviously, when a patient comes, the first questions we ask is about the period. When was your first period? When was your last period? How is your period? Is it regular? Yes. If it is regular, is there any pain that accompanies it? Some will say no pain, some cramps, and so on. But others, the patients with endometriosis will tell you, I have pain. And then the next question is, when does this pain start? And typically for endometriosis, the pain can start a few days to actually a week before the period starts.
True.
And then the pain stays a little bit during the period, and it starts dissipating and disappears until the next time again. So it is cyclical pain, which comes a few days to about a week before the period. So number one, pain accompanied by the period. Number two, some of these patients, when you ask about intercourse, they will tell you, yes, we have pain during intercourse, what we call dyspareunia.
That's right.
And you ask, is it during just when you start having intercourse or during deep penetration? The typical answer is during deep penetration. So that is deep dyspareunia. The other problem is, you mentioned very well about bowel movements when you go for your long call.
Yes.
Some of them is very painful, number one, and we know that it should not be painful. Number two, it is accompanied by blood. Now, this is usually there if the endometriosis is actually quite advanced. But normally we shouldn't see it at the beginning. Now, the other problems which can also be there is incomplete feeling when you go to the toilet for your short call sometimes, and you feel as if you haven't finished.
That's so
and
true.
then you want to go back again. And then when you go there, you find you're only giving just a little,
Just a drop.
bit, and then but you feel as if your bladder is full.
That's true.
So you find something. So these are some of the typical symptoms. But then apart from that, there are other things which come with it. You may feel bloated. Some patients may feel bloated. That feeling of nimechoka, lethargy, you're feeling tired, and and so on. So this can also be. In some patients, they can also have some vomiting as well, especially when it is quite advanced. You may have some vomiting. So actually those days just before the period, during the period, you find these patients basically just want to lock themselves up somewhere and just forget about it. But the biggest problem is that pain. The pain that comes with the periods, yes.
And Dr.
Yes.
What causes this disease?
First of all, nobody really understands why these endometriosis and adenomyosis come about. There are different theories. The first theory is that instead of all the blood coming out during the period, some of it actually goes back into the tubes, and then bits and pieces of the endometrium, the lining, actually embeds itself in these different places that I mentioned, what we call retrograde menstruation.
Yes.
That is one of the theories. The other theory, they say, well, it is possibly genetic, in that if you have endometriosis, most probably maybe your mother had it, and so on. But you see, there is no gene which is responsible for endometriosis.
That's right.
So it is just by information that you get, or my mom also told me that she used to have this kind of pain, and so on and so forth. So you think that in the family you can actually have endometriosis. The other possible reason is what we call the immune system, because the immune system actually protects us from different bacteria and viruses and so on and so forth. So it also defends us from a foreign protein or foreign tissues for that matter. So if this tissue, which is endometrium, finds itself somewhere in the body where it is not supposed to be, then the normal reaction of the body would be to actually start protecting itself against this tissue which is not supposed to be where it is.
Yeah.
And then as it does that, the body starts producing chemicals, what we call inflammatory markers. And these, as they start coming up, they sort of protect that area, stop that tissue from extending.
Yeah.
But by doing that, it creates what we call fibrosis. So you find these things start sticking together, and then you end up in most cases you may find the large intestine, for example, stuck to the womb, or the ovaries stuck to the womb, and so on and so forth. The end of it, you may actually find what is called a frozen pelvis, where you have all these things actually stuck together. I'm sure you have an idea.
Yeah.
You had 3 surgeries,
Yes.
and you've gone through surgery, and I'm sure when the doctor came out, he told you, this is what he found.
Yeah.
Now, the other issue of in as much as it is rare, where we find endometriosis in different parts far away,
Yeah.
for example in the nails and maybe in the brain and in the lungs for that matter, they call it actually lymphatic transport, that we have a lymphatic system which actually drains the body. So it is possible that sometimes this tissue can actually be taken up and transported to other parts of the body. It is a theory. So we really don't know which one of these is actually the real cause of that. Unfortunately, I wish we knew all the medicine, knew everything.
Yeah.
Then we would heal all the diseases, and we'd all be one happy place in this earth. But unfortunately, we are trying, and then we are doing a lot of research to try and understand why some of these things why some of these diseases are around, and what we can do with them.
I think that will be the breakthrough, I think, that we're all waiting for.
Yeah.
Because just as you're talking, one of the theories where it could be genetical, and I'm thinking, no one in my family actually has this kind of pain that I do.
Yes.
I've tried researching, could I have had an aunt who went through this, or my mom? I can't, I can't trace it.
Yeah.
So I really look forward to a time when the research is done and we know that, this is where it came from.
Yes.
Does it help in any way, the early diagnosis?
I think in every disease, the earlier it is diagnosed, the better it is dealt with, and then maybe the possible complications would be much fewer, or possibly they would not be there at all. Now, one of our students from the postgraduate school actually did a study. So it's a small study about in one of the secondary schools, and actually what he found out is that 25 to almost 30% of the girls that he interviewed actually had endometriosis-like symptoms.
Oh, that's sad.
20 to almost 30%. And that is, these girls are in school, they start from first form to fourth form, from around 14 to around 17, 18 years. So if these symptoms persist, and they are not diagnosed early, unfortunately they end up, in the way it ended up with you. Now, the only catch here is that these were endometriosis-like symptoms.
Yes.
And we have to confirm that there was endometriosis.
I get you.
So is it possible to get all these 20, 25, 30% girls and take them to the doctors and do laparoscopy just to confirm that there is endometriosis? Most probably it's going to be difficult.
That's
But
true.
the fact that there are symptoms which are similar to, I think then it should give us the impetus to start actually digging a little bit deeper and start to help these young girls.
Daktari has mentioned laparoscopy. Like, is it possible to have them go for laparoscopy? What is this laparoscopy? Because I know there's a lot, huge terms in this infertility and
Sorry for
endometriosis
throwing
issue.
up a term. Now, when it comes to diagnosis, after we have got all this information
Yes.
about the periods, how they are, and the types of pain, and so on and so forth, the next step ideally should be now, of course, we can do a scan. And most of the scans, when we do them, and there is what we call an endometrioma, meaning that there is a small cyst, typical characteristics of endometriosis,
Yes.
we'll be able to see it on a scan. So that should not be a problem. The bigger problem comes when there are symptoms, but we actually can't see any of them on a scan. Then the best thing to do, the gold standard, is basically to do what is called laparoscopy, which basically means that we take the patients to theater, we make a small cut, 1 centimeter cut around the belly button, and then we insert a camera inside the abdomen. And then we have a look. As we are looking inside, the camera is helping us to look inside the womb, but we look at the screen and see what is basically happening. And actually, we can now be able to see real live what is happening there. We can see what we call stigmata, that is the points of endometriosis where they are, which we could not be able to see in a scan. So here we can actually see them. We can actually see where they are. Sometimes we see the tissue which are stuck together, which the scan cannot show, and so on and so forth. That is why it is called the gold standard. Okay. Now, the other way of diagnosing endometriosis, which is actually indirect. What does that mean? Directly, we put a scope there, we looked and we saw.
Yes.
Like Julius Caesar came, I saw and I conquered. But now this one, it's indirect.
Yes.
So if a patient comes with symptoms of endometriosis, then we can actually give them medications. There are medications we can give them for 3 months. If the symptoms disappear, then we can actually make that conclusion that actually this patient had endometriosis, because the medications which specifically addresses endometriosis has actually helped her. Now, unfortunately, that is something which is done in this part of the world. Why? Because we don't have access to specialists, number one. The equipment is also a problem. The skills for the doctors, to be able to go in and do this is also a problem.
And the cost.
And the cost. Oh yes, and the cost. Very, very important factor. So because we don't have all these things put together, so that is why the indirect way, which is more accessible, can actually be used to diagnose and confirm endometriosis. There are different solutions.
Yes.
Depending on where we are, depending on what we want to do, and where we are going.
Yes.
The solutions again can depend or will depend on the staging of the disease. So for instance, if you have a young lady, like the young ladies I mentioned who are in secondary school, who have endometriosis-like symptoms, well, I think the priority is to go through school, finish school, maybe go to university, have a career, and so on and so forth. So their treatment will be completely different, as opposed to a lady who is trying to have a baby and has all these issues. Her treatment will be completely different. So there is conservative management of endometriosis, and there is surgical management of endometriosis. In the conservative management, we can use many types of drugs. We can use, most of the time what we use are hormones. And some of the hormones that we use actually the purpose is to basically to stop the ovaries from working for some time. Why? Because when the ovaries are working, it means that the reproductive cycle is complete. It means that you have to have a period. It means that the ovaries produce a hormone called estrogen, which feeds actually the endometriosis, and so basically the cycle continues. So one of the methods is to basically stop the ovaries from working using oral contraceptive pills, for example. So when the patient is using oral contraceptive pills, she does not have regular periods. And you can actually use the oral contraceptive pills for 2-3 months. Sometimes the Americans use them even for 6 months without any stop in between. And basically what this does is that there is no pain for those 6 months or 3 months or whatever period the patient is taking the pills. Or if it is there, then it is minimal. Okay? So we can use that. We can use painkillers. We have a wide range of painkillers. We usually start from the very basic painkillers, and then we can keep on advancing. And this can be used in connection with oral contraceptive pills. We can use injectables. That is an injection which actually stops. There's a part of the brain called the pituitary gland, which tells the ovaries that now you can start getting ready to produce an egg, and the reproductive cycle starts. So what this injection does, it stops that communication between the brain and the ovaries. But the only drawback to this injection is that you may have hot flashes, you may have mood swings, all these symptoms which we actually call chemical menopause, because we have subjected your body through a process of menopause. So then when it comes to surgery, the first thing that we need to know is to confirm that there is endometriosis. Sometimes actually you actually don't need a lot of surgery. You just put a camera inside the abdomen and you see, oh, they're just spots of endometriosis. And then you can actually burn them and remove them. Okay? Sometimes, depending again on the grade, how far it has spread, you may have to have very extensive surgery. Say, for instance, as you mentioned right at the beginning, that you had issues with opening your bowels. So most of the time when it gets there, it means that the endometriosis is quite spread and it has reached stage 4, what we call American Society of Fertility. So they have a different sort of grading system. So in that case, you will need a very skillful surgeon who is well trained and experienced in operating in such difficult conditions. And sometimes actually you may need another surgeon who also is skillful in doing what is called, we cut and join the bowels together laparoscopically, which is a skill which not very many doctors have. That is why I said, one of the biggest problems that we have is skills. And this takes a lot of time to get to that point whereby you can actually chop and suture and tie the intestine in very limited space, and while you're watching on the screen. So it can be a huge challenge. So depending on where we are, sometimes you can combine the surgery with the medicines. So we remove as much endometriosis as possible, and then we give you the medications, either the injections or the oral contraceptive pills or other hormonal injections, such that we stop it from working. From coming up again and causing all these issues. So it all depends on where we are. In some very, very difficult cases, definitively, I have had one case. One patient came to see me, a very young lady, 30, I think she was 30, 32, and she had endometriosis very early, and she went through a lot until they had. She went outside the country, and they had to remove the womb plus the ovaries as well. But then that has issues as well, because if you remove your ovaries at 30, it means that this lady is actually has to go through the menopause. So we have to supplement by giving her medications, which she has to use for almost until the end of her life, because the ovaries produce estrogen, and estrogen is what makes women who they are. The way they think, the way they talk, the way they look is because of estrogen. So if estrogen is not there, number one, you start having mood swings, but quarreling with your husband for whatever reason, and your husband will look and say, but what was the reason? So the mood swings are there. You may have palpitations. You find your heart beating a lot faster than normal. Nothing has scared you, and so on. You may find sleeping becomes a problem. You don't sleep when you want to sleep, or when you sleep, it's intermittent, and so on. You find that the bone density also starts reducing, and so on and so forth. So in a very extreme cases, like this young lady who had her womb removed plus the ovaries, it was because it was completely unbearable. And then the other problem is that the pain medications, her body tolerated and got tolerant to some medications, and they couldn't help her. So they had to use other medications, which again can lead to addiction. So you find we give her medication, said, you know what, normally this dose 100 milligrams of this medication knocks out a patient for a whole day. But since she has been using it for quite some time, 100 milligrams is nothing, so you have to use more. So it really became a problem. But these are some of the issues that we have to deal with. But thank God that we know that there's some things which we can do, which can alleviate, which can make the lives of these patients a lot better.
And I think one of those things, what you were trying to discuss with Karen a while earlier, like what else can we do? Like I realized swimming works for me.
No, there you go.
Baby pool swimming, actually. And kind of swimming. So that kind of works for me. Makes me relax and sleep better. And also we avoid a lot of food. What do we eat? I usually, when someone asks me to stop taking this, I'm like, don't do that. Just tell me what to take now, because I'm almost stopping everything. I'm just wondering, Karen, what impact has this had in your life, number one, and how are you coping? What are you doing to helping you?
Let's start with the impact. So I was shattered. I learned about it. And talk of broken dreams and relinquished hopes and expectations. That happened, and I went through that phase of denial and then the many phases of acceptance where you're like, oh right, I have this, right? Then you're like, no, I don't. And it went on and on for some time, not too long though. But sooner or later I'm like, everyone has trouble in this life. If it is not endometriosis, it is something else.
That's true.
And it's equally as intense for whoever is going through it. So that even if you desire to switch, you might switch and be like, hey,
give me mine back.
Bring back.
Mine is lighter.
Mine is lighter. And as soon as I accepted and realized that, it helped me to move to the next level. And for me, the next level was, how do I cope with this? It pays not to think about the pain all the time. So number one thing, I think, finding meaning in the pain is so important. Because, it's like what is it called? Something that's pricked your thorn. So long as it stays in the flesh, it's painful. It hurts. But immediately you get it out,
you feel better.
It stops. So I think there's something about pain when it is shared, when you find meaning for it. And the meaning could be encouraging someone else who's going through it. The meaning could be finding a better path for your life. The meaning could be taking care of yourself better. So first I found meaning, and for me the meaning was start something, because I realized that there's so many things I cannot eat. There are so many things I cannot put on my body, because potentially they are creating more harm than good. So I started a business, which is the Karen's Homemade, and I learned to take care of me better. Because you see, initially with the pain, I felt like I had to excuse my pain every time I spoke about period pain. I felt like I owed people an explanation. But I realized when I discovered that I had endo, I just learned to, people call it self-love, to love me, to take care of me without explaining that, I'm in pain, so let me go rest. I mean, when I feel that I need to rest, I rest. When I feel that I can pick this up and work on it, I work. But that liberation of knowing that I owe no one an explanation. Surprisingly is what Endo gave me. I now feel liberated to talk to people about it and to be me, to do me. So I think those two things, finding meaning is how I managed to cope with it. And as they would say, making lemonade out of the lemons, which is not easy. I mean, you don't wake up and tomorrow you're like, oh, I have lemons. Come on, let's do lemonade. No, it's a process. So take yourself through that journey and find meaning for your pain.
I like that approach. Endometriosis gave a business idea and now she's running with it. And I think if I'm to speak for myself, what this kind of brought is waiting rooms trust. I usually say it was born out of pain because having gone through this, I was wondering who's reaching out to the other people in similar shoes. I think we actually became pretty close because of this endometriosis.
True.
And so you see, reaching out to people helps. You see a smile on someone, you plant a smile on someone's face, and that's it. And then because of this, I also met an amazing doctor, Dr. Kireki.
Thank you.
Who's been very helpful. By the Daktari, thank you for helping us.
You're welcome.
We're very grateful. And so, meaning there's hope. It's possible to live with this and remain sober and still afford a smile. Some of the lifestyle changes that have worked for you.
There are many. So number one, I remember initially I said I'd decide, let's say, to work out more, to beat the pain, the endo pain, because I was told, well, I didn't know that it was endo then, but to beat period pain, it says, work out, then you produce endorphins, happy hormones, and the pain is less, But you see, I didn't know that it was endo, so I'd work out some more, and then I'd have serious pain after that. And I'm like, maybe I'm not working out enough.
Then
Let's ramp it up even further.
Wow.
But after learning that I've got endo, one of the lifestyle changes I've had to make is during my period, I actually rest.
Take a break here.
I take a break. If I want to sleep a bit, I'll sleep a bit. But I generally just do light work. If I must do some exercise, it will be stretching. And then in terms of diet, a lot has happened there. So number one, I had to totally cut out gluten. I mean, thankfully before that, I was already not taking some foods that are considered generally inflammatory, like milk and maybe beef, So those are things I had already cut out way before endo. But when I discovered that I had endo, then I had to quit the gluten as well. And take more natural kind of sugars. So for me, the big thing has been gluten because chapati, pizza,
How can you stop chapati?
cakes and all kinds of treats. Those comfort foods that once in a while you'd run to. So I had to quit. And when you quit gluten is when you realize that everything around you suddenly has gluten.
True.
So for me, that has been the biggest lifestyle change. Together with general lifestyle in terms of exercising and when to exercise. Pretty much I think that's it. And adoption of more natural body care products. Those has
Paraben-free stuff and all. I agree with that because we were discussing in a different forum, Endometriosis Foundation of Kenya, and most endo warriors are lactose intolerant. You take milk, like if I take milk now, I will be 3 months, I call it 3 months pregnant. So some of these things are really, we don't have a choice. We just have to adjust to, like, try different stuff. If it doesn't work for you, just cut it. Remember, it's about self-care. Take care of yourself first, and then all these other things will fall in place. We have now run out of time and we have to bring this to a close. But just before we do that, Daktari, what would be your final words to our viewers?
I think number one, it's that it is a problem, but this problem has solutions. There are medical solutions, there are surgical solutions. But then again, lastly, I think for the husbands, for instance, of ladies who have this issue, they need support. We need to support them. For the mothers whose children, whose daughters may be having this issue or similar symptoms, please bring them to your doctor. Take them to the doctors, and then the earlier the diagnosis, the better the outcomes. Yes.
Thank you very much. That is true, and I 100% support it. Karen, please.
I'll pick up from where Doc has left. To the husbands, please support your partners or wives that are going through or have endometriosis, and find out what support they need at different points, because it's not always the same. At times the support could mean one thing, at times it could be emotional, at times it could just be treating them as normal people because they want to forget about the pain. So support. And number 2, for endo warriors, find meaning in the pain. It's not a death sentence. Remember that, because that is a whole new, it's the wind beneath your wings. So remember that. And number 2, take a break. Take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, the warrior is still a child. So in as much as you're battling endo, take time to take care of yourself once in a while and be there for others when you can.
I know it feels like we are wounded, but even wounded soldiers can still do something. So let us use our experience to reach out to others. I'm sure for endo warriors, you do not want anyone to go through what you have been. So talk about it. Let us create awareness. And I cannot forget to mention childless, not by choice, women or men out there. With or without a child, you are still special. You are enough. So do not take this to heart and let it depress you, as much as I know the journey is not easy. You are still special. So please just rise up, walk on, and know that God has you covered. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to having you in our next show.